Hey everyone, it's Thyworm here, and in today's video I want to talk about why I think crafting in Solar Self-Found is going to be significantly better in 0.3. When watching the reveal I thought it is still tons of RNG, but after reading the patch notes and watching it again I changed my mind a bit. I feel the patch notes indicate a very straightforward way to craft decent Solar Self-Found gear, which I wanted to share, so let's dive in. It's fair to say that in the current PoE 2 patch 0.2.1d, crafting still contains a lot of RNG. There's very little player agency, which many players don't like. Crafting is often called gambling. I get people in the comment section and Discord saying that they don't want to play SSF because of it. And that's all fair, but maybe this video can convince you otherwise. All this feedback reached the developers loud and clear it seems, plus it should be pretty clear at this point they also play the game, but there's only so much you can do in 4 months, right? The main culprit for crafting in general, but in particular in SSF where resources are harder to come by, is that crafting has basically no safe states or milestones or checkpoints or really many deterministic components to begin with. Basically every step of crafting an item is RNG, so to get a rare item with even 4 decent affixes requires you to roll the RNG dice multiple times, like 5 times or so, and each time you need to hit, which is very unlikely and not very fun. And I guess even worse if you sort of think what crafting consists of, because hitting a good roll means you first need to hit the affix you want, and second you need to hit a high tier roll or it's still a useless affix. And you need to do that 4 times if your aim is 4 decent affixes on a rare piece. That is my goal typically in Solar Self-Found, a rare with 4 decent affixes. I'm happy when that happens. So that's the clear issue that needs fixing. Let's look at how they did that. The solution consists of 4 main elements, sort of scattered throughout the video and patch notes. I'll talk about these in the order you would use them to craft your item. I will briefly touch on some other impacts of crafting as well in the next chapter. The first main element of the solution is a new category of normal items that can drop, so-called exceptional items. These items drop only on normal rarity and have either up to 30% quality or they have an additional socket. These are great base items to use when starting a craft from scratch. I would say in SSF it is a bit of a luxury starting point. I think normal items that aren't exceptional will work just as well, but if you are already walking around in top tier gear, this is the place to start. The second main element are the new crafting currencies outside of Abyss, which start dropping in the late campaign and maps. Transmutes, Augments, Chaos Orbs, Regal Orbs and Exalted Orbs get 2 more tiers, a greater and a perfect version, like the existing Jeweler Orb for example. These greater and perfect versions imbue gear with minimum tiers of a random affix, so for example a perfect augment always adds a tier 2 or tier 1 affix. This is just an example, I don't know the actual numbers, but in the reveal a perfect orb of transmutation added a tier 2 cold resistance affix on a ring. While the affix itself is still RNG, getting a high tier affix in SSF is valuable. It solves half of the RNG problems I described earlier we have with regular or normal crafting currencies, because at the very least we get the high tier affixes. And I would argue this is significant because yes, the actual affix itself is RNG, but the tier is deterministic. I think greater and perfect augments and transmutes, which I expect to be the most common, can create very decent starting items to further craft on with 2 usable high tier affixes. That means by combining the first 2 main elements of the solution, you have a magic item with 2 tier 2 or better affixes. The third element in the solution is the rework of essences. They already had normal and greater versions and their drop rates were buffed in several patches last league. Now they are getting a perfect version too, and maybe lesser versions are new as well. I don't quite remember the current state of these, which tells you a little bit how often they're used in SSF, right? Instead of adding an affix of a certain tag, essences now add a specific affix depending on the tier of essence and type of item it's being applied to. So before 0.3, an essence would add a cold affix, which would on a ring be either cold damage or cold resistance or whatever other cold affix can roll on a ring, and it would have a random tier as well. After 0.3, it will straight up say it provides gold resistance. Depending on the version of the essence, meaning from lesser to perfect, the tier of the affix is guaranteed as well. This way, the essence upgrades magic items to rare items and adds a guaranteed affix of a guaranteed tier. There is a bit more to it. Some essences remove and add an affix like a Chaos Orb, or just like Ashling used to do in PoE 1, if you're familiar with that. But I expect those essences to be quite rare and not very SSF viable. So I don't think that is worth discussing for now, as I wanted to stick to resources I believe we will be getting a good amount of. After the 3 elements of the solution, you should have a rare item with 3 high tier affixes, and one of those is deterministic. The 4th and final element of the solution is the league mechanic itself, Abyss. It looks awesome, and apart from juicing a bunch of maps, which should translate to crafting currency and base items, it provides a targeted crafting option. The bones you find from closing pits can be used on items, allowing you to add affixes to rare gear, and even waystones, but I'm not going to discuss that today. Using a bone in the Well of Souls provides 3 crafting options to choose from, just like you would get with Unveiling Veiled affixes from Betrayal in Path of Exile 1. Assuming it is a comparable system, and it surely looks like it, I think you'll typically get something usable, making this a semi-deterministic outcome. It can be used on at least a rare item, maybe on other items too, who knows, but they apply it to a rare item in the video, and I think that makes sense. I am quite sure there is a limit to how many of these affixes you can have on a rare, as it also turns the item into a desecrated item. You can see the icon changes after applying the bone, and I think this only works on non-influenced items to prevent crafting from being too deterministic, which makes sense. As this is a semi-deterministic crafting system, which over time likely gets solved in terms of which desecrated affixes are available on which items, you will likely know at some point which affixes you can expect. Again, I think that's similar to veiled modifiers, where if you have one on a prefix on a boot, you will pretty much always get movement speed. If we use the desecrated affix on the item we created so far, so the rare item with 3 high tier affixes, you end up with a rare with 3 regular high tier affixes and 1 desecrated affix of your choice. This seems to me completely reasonable and feasible as an outcome, meaning rare items with 4 high tier affixes that you want is achievable in endgame crafting. I think especially the starting point here with perfect or greater transmutes and augments will be a game changer, because it is only that step which is purely RNG in terms of which affixes you get, but the ones you do get don't need to be perfect, as the next steps in the crafting process are deterministic, as long as they exist on an essence or an abyss craft. Ultimately, once you have your 4 affix rare, you can close your eyes and slam it twice, but at that point I don't think most SSF players mind that much anymore. What you have before slamming is already so much better than you would typically have these days, that those slams are going to feel like a bonus, not a last hope to still salvage the item. I want to talk a bit about some additional crafting changes that are coming in 0.3. For example, I'm not entirely convinced that in the campaign all of this that I just described is going to beat the inventory of the vendor. The vendor and gambling is likely still very good, unless it's nerfed. It's not fun, I don't like it, but it is good. The drop rate of currency is a lot better now than it was at the start of 0.2, but I think they might need to boost it a bit more for you to craft and drop most of the pieces rather than buy them for gold, which I imagine is still the philosophy, right? I don't think they want you to gamble for most of your pieces. We'll have to see, but my last run was already not bad in terms of gear progression, so it's improved a lot. It's just that not many people noticed that because most of them stopped playing 0.2 straight away. It's worth noting that runes did get nerfed a little bit. Most runes you would often use, the ones providing resistances for example, now give -2 compared to before. So a greater desert rune is 10% fire res instead of the current 12. Iron runes are about 30% weaker. That is mostly a nerf to energy shield builds, I would say. I do think, however, that with the addition of around 100 clusters on the passive tree and reduced attribute requirements across the board, meaning more points available to invest in those clusters, these slight nerfs are offset by the passive tree. I don't think we'll lose much power here, but purely looking at items and crafting, runes are a bit weaker. Soul cores got nerfed too and usually will only apply to a single armor piece instead of being eligible for all armor pieces. And Val Orb drop rates are redistributed. They will appear less often in general and more often in Chaos Trials, which is clearly not great. I don't know many people that enjoy Chaos Trials. But okay, so far I didn't suffer from a lack of Val Orbs really, even when corrupting all my Waystones. I don't expect this to be a huge issue. This is pretty much all I could cook up from the patch notes and the reveal. I'm curious to hear what you think the impact is on SSF crafting and if you agree with my take, or if you think I'm missing something important here. I will be playing the patch for sure. I'm quite excited about it. It looks absolutely fabulous. I would normally take some time off from work, but I can't this time. At least not in week 1. Still, I'm hoping to create some content and I will do a 0 to hero build for sure and most likely update my minions and necromancer and that sort of thing. So yeah, that's all gonna be up there. If you're interested in that, don't forget to like and subscribe. And for now, guys, thanks for watching. Love you all. See you soon. Bye bye.